So the deadline for the PU circuit playoffs, round one, was on Sunday. There were 4 sets to get through, so naturally, there's only been 2 sets played, and we don't have very much to go over. But that's okay. Welcome back to Untier Talk, the podcast about the Johnniest tier of all the tiers.
Mm-hmm.
I am joined today by Hajan.
What's up, guys? It's H. John.
H. John, yeah. PU Circuit Playoffs, we did some good old predictions for that last week. It's like we're excited to see the games, and we're still excited to see those games. So tomorrow morning, I think there's going to be 2 sets. There's going to be Hajad Teddy, and there's going to be Tasker Ziri. But for now, which one do you want to start with? Do you want to do Katut Pepe, or do you want to do me versus TJ?
Let's do Katut Pepe, because as far as I'm aware, that set was pretty nuts.
It was, and it also happened first, so we'd be sticking in chronological order.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do that then.
So game 1, all these games are going to be linked in the description. I would recommend, like, if you're listening to this with your computer or whatever, you can go through and fiddle with them and, for replay and rewind it to your heart's content. But I'm not doing video because I still just don't think that's any better whatsoever. How in depth do we want to go? I don't know. Like at team at team preview, I was like, okay, this set's gonna be kind of nuts. Katut's
I felt like
is just on the side of being like, okay, this could reasonably be thought of as kind of standard, even if it's a little weirdly slow and just a odd looking bounce build. And then Pepe's just got I don't even know what. Game 1 should be the top linked game, the one where Pepe has a Lowland Persian Silvally Mawile Servine core.
This kind of reminds me, honestly, in if I'm trying to innovate a new balance core, and I come up with these crazy ideas, you know what I'm saying? You come up with these. Well, you look.
Well, I don't think he has any assault vest users, but aside from that, I get your point.
Yeah, well, in my case, it would probably be an assault vest Articuno, but it's I just look at his team and I just feel like he's gone for a lot of roll compression, but the problem is that a problem that I think a lot of people mistake in this meta is that he's gone for roll compression, but he's almost done it in a way where he's so passive that he's not actively going out and searching for the win like Keita is. And I feel like that was what his essentially, it's a risk when you take that in this meta. Like if you go and you take a super passive team, you know that it's completely dependent on what Keita wants to bring. And if Keita brings the correct combination of monsters, it doesn't even need to be that one Pokemon in particular. It can't be just he brings Stoutland, I lose. He doesn't bring Stoutland, I win. It's not like that. It's like, if he brings this certain combination of things, like Spikes plus a Rocker plus X Pokemon, I lose.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's so many ways you can lose if you go for a really specific passive backbone. Especially when you look at his team, not much on his team gets recovery. Like you have Articuno that gets recovery, and you get Servine that potentially has recovery. But I'd wager on team preview, if I looked at his team, I'd say it's 100% Scarf Servine. There's no other thing. If he's not Scarf Servine, his team is just slow, full stop.
I mean, yeah, but I definitely. If I was looking at it in preview, I'd be like, I wouldn't put it past Pepe to just make a Lowland Persian his speed control. But I do agree with what you said, and the upshot is, Katut is quite weak to Articuno, which is what stops you from being passive, is that I have both an Articuno and a Servine, which are somewhat uncommon, somewhat difficult to handle Pokemon. And if either one of those happens to have a good matchup, then you're not as passive as you would be a lot of the time. In this case, Articuno just does really well against 5 out of 6 Mons, and then is checked by Metang. And there are definitely flip sides. Like Pepe, I really think over a longer period of time, because he's so passive, I think Stoutland's just a huge weakness, given that it's just the Mawile Um, there's some other
I feel
random
like
stuff. Simi Seer obviously just like really blows through this team once Silvally Dragon has any chip on it. But the upshot of this game was Pepe did not have too hard of a matchup. There's a Stoutland, but there's no Healing Wish alongside it, which is what
no, but
would
like
really need to make it terrifying, I think. And there isn't a Alolan Executor, but nothing ever really got going. And once Katut got lured by knockoff Mawile and Metang lost the Eviolite, that was it. Metang died to Sky Strike, I think, or something. And I think like Metang directly died to the Articuno because it lost a Violet. Yeah, Sky Strike did 40%. The Metang died. And that was the entire game.
The problem. Like that, you remember when I was mentioning like certain combinations of things, like pouncing on things being passive? That's exactly what happened to Keita, but in reverse, like the reverse of what I expected to happen. Like you had Mawile, like who predicts, like who thinks, like when they're actively building a team, I'm gonna prepare for knockoff Mawile plus Articuno. You just don't. You don't. You have. Like you have sometimes you build a team and it's good versus that, and sometimes you don't. And in this case, Keita got really punished for bringing like meta checks essentially. Like he brought Metang to meta check like this certain element, this certain element of Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought like Quillfish and Pom to like complement it. But then the rest of it is just sort of like put here and put there, and the team is sort of like versus that speed tier in specific, like he really struggles versus that. Like,
yeah, his team is too slow to effectively deal with Articuno and Servine speed tiers, which are not like crazy fast, which is really weird.
Yeah, exactly.
And like Katut's team is like solid against this in paper. Like on paper, Alolan Executor can be hugely devastating if there's just rocks up. Even Pom Pom hits, it like beats everything on Pepe's team potentially, depending on the set. Spikes could
Not
be
even,
nice.
like,
Spikes not so much. Metang is genuinely good at checking Pepe's team, but getting caught by Knockma Mawile, I think that kind of just needed to be scouted, to be honest. I don't know if in a game I would have scouted for and like.
So the Alolan Eggy never came out, did it?
No, it never even came out. It never
Did
had.
we find out what item the Pom Pom was? It showed Air Slash, so I assume it's not.
Yeah, I assume it's.
Fly in EMZ.
Yeah, I assume it's not offensive with Revelation Dance, but even just like Toxic Hurricane Pom Pom is pretty nice, or Toxic Air Slash Pom Pom.
Yeah. So what I was thinking of, and this might be.
I know it's U-turn Pom Pom. Okay, so it might even have been.
It was U-turn Air Slash.
Yeah, it's U-turn Air, which is so weird because Katut's only breaker is Stoutland, and I like U-turn if you have like, if it was Specs Alolan Eggy, and you had like the dual breaker, or even just like something that reliably wall breaks against more teams, like Simisear wall breaks like so many teams, then you can justify U-turn. But if it's U-turn for literally just your Stoutland, I think that's kind of a waste, to be honest. Because you're losing so much utility on like being able to run, multiple of Taunt, Toxic Defog, whatever you want, a hidden power, Revelation Dance, etc.
Yeah.
So like U-turn is really weird on this team. It might have even been Specs Eggy, although then you have no real win condition.
There's no way.
There's no way.
Basically, from what I look, it has to be Trick Room. Like, and if that's the case, that it is Trick Room, I have no idea how Keita lost this game, because all he needed is literally Stealth Rock and then Eggy Alola to come in Trick Room, and he has so much like impetus going forward in that game that it's literally crazy. The only way that like he can click Flamethrower into Silvally and then click like Draco Meteor or whatever, and you always get a kill that way. There's like no way that he doesn't.
So, but like he never got anything going. Eggy never came in. If we see,
it never came in. By the time it
came Eggy never came in. He lets Quillfish die to Silvally Dragon's T-Bolt early on because he doesn't have like a check. Like early on when it's still 6-5, then Quillfish drops, so T-spikes go up. So Alolan Eggy can't be like a super reliable stop. And then at that point, Katut only has like 3 Mons and nothing ever got. And there's really, I don't even think there's much to comment in terms of on the actual game. Like I think Pepe played solid for what he needed. Like
No, Pepe played extremely well,
he
in my
lured the
opinion. Yeah,
Mawile, and then there was nothing super flashy. There was just completely solid. No chance really for Katut to get anything started, and by turn 23, he's forfeiting because his Metang's dead to the Kuno, which is the
yeah,
opposite
no,
of how checks are supposed to work.
yeah, 100%. No, basically what he did, what he set out to do, was to prevent rocks from going up. Because if he prevented rocks from going up, he could take on the Eggy. Like,
Mhm.
didn't matter what set it was. But just to be safe from the Trick Room set, you needed to keep rocks off the field. And he managed to do that on the Metang extremely reliably and turn Metang into a liability rather than, like something
Right.
like it used to check.
Metang
It's
was
like a liability.
Metang was a huge thing going in, hugely important for rocks and checking Silvally because it was T-Bolt, not Flamethrower, and checking Kuno and checking Servine to an extent. Kind of depends on the sets. Metang will often lose to Servine.
Depends how much
But you
use
see,
to check the
let's
other
see,
ones.
Metang switches directly into Mawile as it taking a knockoff, as Mawile clicks knockoff, which is already golden. Then
Yeah.
Mawile taunts to prevent Stealth Rock, and like the
Yeah.
game was over.
That's the game.
And
That's the game.
we should just move on. That's it.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we should. But yeah, I think you can give Pepe a lot of like props, I guess you can say. And Keita, I guess you can tell him like, okay, you understand that your poke. We had to understand, I think, more from team preview. I know it's easy to click buttons and stuff, but you have to understand more in team preview that you needed to keep that Pokemon alive specifically because you needed that thing. Like, there's no point switching it into a Mawile. Like, in that case, you know that they may be carrying knockoff. They might carry some crazy tech, whatever.
Frankly, I would have been going hard Eggy. I just have, but like defensive play rough is definitely a risk. But at the same time, I don't really see defensive play rough, and that's a risk I might have taken.
Yeah,
Then again, but really, like the safe
Quillfish.
switching should be Pom Pom or Quillfish. That's kind of
Dude, if you go Quillfish and you get a spike up, you force the Articuno in, which gets you Stealth Rock that way. Or if you go Quillfish and they bring in Dragon Silvally, you can bring in Hard Stoutland, or you can go Metang anyway. Like, there's so many more like array of plays.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
we got 6 games. I don't want to spend too long on this because we've already said that's it. Let's go. So second game, we're gonna remove all the props I gave to Pepe because he recycled an old team that sucks. Well, let's just be objective about this. This team is I'm going to fish for matchup and surprise set team. That is all it is. And if you like,
can you call it surprise set? Can you call it surprise set? Like,
you
the team is
can't,
that old, I'm
assuming
pretty sure you can
assuming
search for it.
Katut did any scouting, not really, but you can kind of. And honestly, like you can look at a later game 2 and a later set for an example of how to actually like fish for matchup in a way that seems reasonable in the context. This is just kind of stupid. He brings Lycanroc Midnight and Alolan Sandslash and Drifblim, not Alolan, regular Sandslash and Drifblim, and the team is just not good, and I cannot respect it. It is a pre-tier shift team. It is very weak to, say, water types, Articuno. Okay, I'm not even going to keep listing things. The team is just weak to a lot of shit, whereas Katut decides...
with Scarf Lycanroc Midnight?
You have the replay. What are you asking me for?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Midnight...
Was it the one with-
Yeah, the Midnight is scarfed.
Okay. Yeah, because I was theorem running a lot with back in, I think it was PUPL. I was using quite heavily the what's it called? The
AV
SD
ramp
set.
and SD set, right?
Double dance thingy, because
Yeah.
you could Oko Togedemaru with Splintered Storm Shards. So I was thinking, okay, if he's that set and like Scar Sandslash or something, or Scar
If he's that set,
Shiftry,
it'd be scary. It still is kind of scary in the matchup. Like Scarf Lycanroc is genuinely pretty solid in
it's
this
right.
matchup, given that Katut's rock resist is Togedemaru. He is not quite. He could be Aggron weak. If Mesprit's a hidden power, then it's not super Aggron. Anyway, Lycanroc's nice, and like even like Drifblim can do stuff. Sandslash is a bit of a waste, but like the team doesn't even have like the worst matchup, I guess. But Katut decides, I guess, like after game 1 where he brought some weird shit, he literally brought like PU the meta. This.
Yeah.
I mean, Caracosta is weird. It's not a meta pick, but like the other 5 Mons mean that he could have had like a Beedrill in the last slot, and I'd still be calling it Pew the meta.
Yeah. No, 100%.
And this game was just like Pew the meta versus this is the random shit that Pepe's been bringing with and just beating like random bad players with for a while. But I don't really think he's had like, I don't know that he's had a ton of success with it versus like actual players. And this team definitely, like this game was really close.
I clicked off of this game like halfway through because I thought Pepe won. Because he got T-spikes up and I saw K-Touch, all of his ones were like super weak. I just clicked off. I was like, yeah, no, bun this.
Yeah, this game is nuts, and there's no way to describe it well. This is a game that you should really be looking at on your screen. I'm still not doing video. Don't ask me for that. I don't think it helps, and you can absolutely just listen to the podcast on its own while doing other things. But basically what we see is that early on, Katat shows he's T-Wave Mesprit, which is weird. But what I really want to talk about is that like Pepe literally just sacrifices his Quillfish turn forward just to get up a T-Spike because T-Spikes are kind of useful. And then after that, how do you put it? He kind of just doesn't. He uses Resto Chesto Driftblim, which is not a good set, to use Shadow Ball versus an Assault Vest Electros, and with a really useful Spadef drop, ends up 1v1ing said Electros. And then beating the Electros, forcing Katat to switch in his Caracosta and chip it get it chipped by T-Spikes and rocks when Caracosta is the win condition. And by turn 16, it's 4-3, but Pepe has the switch in. He has the he's just not particularly afraid of the Lilligant. He still has to play somewhat carefully to not lose to Scarf Togue, but it looks like Pepe just wins with Shiftry. That is what you would expect at this point. That you would think Pepe is going to just win with Shiftry. You would not expect anything else. And really, like I can't attribute it to much more than a Spadef drop. If I'm being completely honest, if the Electros won,
let's not get it twisted here. Like if K-Tut did not flinch the Mesprit, Pepe won. So it's like an 80% chance for Pepe to win. But if you think about it in detail, yeah.
No, it was a paralyzed Mesprit too. It was a paralyzed Mesprit too.
Oh shit, yeah. But that's still like paralysis isn't that broken, is it? Like it's not some ridiculous percentage to flinch and para all in one. You know what I'm saying?
It's a 25% chance followed by a 20% chance, but you can get either or. And this, so that's not in Katat's favor, but I really do think that's balanced out for like a huge Spadef drop that just changed the course of the game. Because if the Electros beats the Driftblim in the 1v1, and Katat has the offensive momentum, and like is not down a full mon, like losing the offensive momentum, that's kind of all he needs. Because Smash Costa, Scarf Togue, and Quiverdance Lilligant all do very well versus Katat's team. All do very well versus Pepe's team. Excuse me, extremely well. Like Pepe doesn't have great checks to any of them. It's kind of just Shiftry. Shiftry can't stop all of them, and like Pepe maybe could have found a way to clutch it up, but like you definitely think, okay, Katat's really looking strong here. Instead, with Pepe having the ability to like get in the Shiftry that you already think just wins, like that is kind of terrifying.
Let's cut back a little bit and just explain how crazy it is that a Driftblim 1v1'd an Electros. How often do you see that happen? Like that's crazy. That's stuff that you speak about like to your grandchildren.
It's because Katat didn't want to click Volt. He wanted to have Electros in, which I kind of question because
worst case, you go Sand Slash.
You go like you could really just Volt to Togedemaru, and then if you're really unhappy and you wanted to sack Electros, just you turn out and fodder Electros after he gets the switch in on Togedemaru. There's really no harm in that. You're taking like very slight chip with your Togue, and there's no reason to not have like a bit of the death fodder and the offensive pressure and
Yeah,
like the Spadef drop does come because Katut just makes a really weird play, and I can't ask him why he wanted to do it. For like, if he wins the whole thing, then maybe we'll have him on, and then we'll be able to ask him that. But until then, like, this is just weird. He tries to kill it with knockoff, which will leave Electros with like 10% and easily revenge killed. And then this, like, I don't know, but the Spadef drop is really like the game until it's somehow not the game.
yeah. I feel like this game could be judged in like two lenses. How did Keita screw with his matchup, and how did Pepe screw with his matchup? And I think at the end of the day, you have to ask more questions of Pepe than you can of Keita, because Keita was forced into a situation. Like he was like,
he was literally Spadef dropped into it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He was Spadef dropped into a shitty situation.
Before this,
Pepe, he was sort of he put himself in a situation like that, and you can forgive that less.
And so like before this Spadef situation completely changes the game, Katut has let his Mesprit and Frostlass die, but like not in the most ridiculous circumstances. He got up rocks, he chipped most of the team. So this is kind of kind for him. Pepe is in a great situation. He's got the Shiftry out. Katut decides to preserve his Caracosta and instead go to Togedemaru. So now Togedemaru is chipped and in range of Sucker Punch. And then I'm going to describe this sequence of situations where Pepe somehow loses the game. So Pepe tries to Sucker Punch the Scarf Togue, as you would, and the Togue goes for Toxic. Okay, so you lost the 50-50, but you still have this Shiftry that can kill like the entire team. Togue Toxics again because it's scarfed, as Pepe just takes the free knockoff, which is good. You want the Togue out of there because it can legitimately sweep your team. Like Ironhead actually, like the Ironhead actually like just kills Lycanroc, probably kills Sandslash from there, and can flinch paralyzed Mesprit. So like there is a good chance if Shifty's gone, Togue would win. So getting it out of the way is good. But between Iron Barb's Life Orb and Toxic, Shifty's down at about 37%. So Katut goes Lilligant and reveals that he's some kind of fat, slower leftovers set, which is like the Lilligant is slower than a Shiftry. I do not know how to explain it. I do not know why to explain this. I do not know what he's going for. I can, like, in theory, a bulky Quiver Dance Lilligant maybe is not the worst thing, but I do not know anything about it, and it just seems kind of weird. So Shiftry kills the Lilligant, but between more Life Orb and Toxic and whatever, it is down to 8%. And it is now Caracosta's poisoned... Katut's poisoned Caracosta at 63% versus an 8% Shiftry, a paralyzed... defensive Mesprit at like 40%. I don't know. It just stopped displaying. It just stopped displaying percents for some reason. Okay, like 70%. A Choice Scarf Lycanroc Midnight at like 20 something percent, and then a Sandslash at like 36%. And what happens is Katut clicks Aqua Jet as Pepe does not Sucker. Sucker would win the game, but it also risks Cell Smash and then just losing. So. Okay. And then after that, Caracosta Aqua Jets its way through Lycanroc and through Sandslash because they both died at Aqua Jet, even though they're faster. This is a little bit of a misplay because if Katut dies to poison while trying to kill the Mesprit, you want to have an extra Mon in the back. So you don't sack those first, but whatever. Then the Caracosta, which only has like 3 more turns left, comes in against the defensive Mesprit, which he has at 75%, and just goes for Waterfall, gets the flinch, and kills it with a Z move. The game was all down to can you kill with the Z with not can you kill with Z? Can you flinch or get a full para on the Mesprit so that you can kill it with the Z move? And it's like, I want to say Pepe fucked up really hard, but at the same time, I genuinely am not sure what I would have done differently. Not suckering is like kind of reasonable because if Caracosta smashes, you automatically lose, and if Caracosta doesn't smash, you still have the chance to not get flinched. So like, it's really hard to say Pepe fucked up, other than at Team Builder, his team is stupidly weak to water types, like I mentioned. But yeah, it was like mental at the time watching it live. Everyone had was certain Katut lost, and then to realize, wait, he has a chance. He just needs one flinch or para, which is like not the worst odds. This was just weird. Like this was so weird. In an alternate universe where there's no SPDF drop, absolutely Caracosta looks like it's probably just going to win the game for him, or at least like Caracosta plus Scarf Togue. But this Mon just fucking clutches with Aqua Jet.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much really to say. I think it was more a. If you think about it, I think Pepe rested on his laurels a little bit. You know, like when he got all the hacks, I felt like, okay, he said to himself, like, okay, this game is finished now. I just have to play it out. He thought he had like an unsurmountable lead. Okay, and he thought, okay, I can't lose this game now. I just have to play it out like turn for turn. But we later realized that he didn't have that sort of leeway room, and he should have played it differently. But by then, like, he'd already sort of committed to like playing it out. So yeah, I don't know. You could call it. I don't think you could call it anybody's fault. I think you can just say like Pepe should have been on it more.
And like, what else would you have done? Because that was the feeling I had before I came back and rewatched the game. But I don't know that he made a play that I would call bad.
No. You can't say he made a play that's bad. You just say that he didn't play aggressively enough, and that was.
I don't even like maybe, but I don't even know that like not leaf storming or not sucker punching the Caracosta, like that is the aggressive play. But I don't even know if I'd call it the right play. I don't know that what you're saying is necessarily fair, because like not playing aggressively is really like he really just only had one choice in this. I guess like not killing the Togedemaru and Lilligant with your Shiftry, but that doesn't necessarily change a ton. And I don't know, like I don't really think he played it wrong.
No, I don't think you can say. I don't think you can outright definitively say like Pepe played it badly or wrong in any way. But I feel like you could say, okay, you could have tried with a different philosophy, like a different like now. We could obviously say, look, you should have sucker punched the Caracosta here because there's no way he isn't going to like. There's no way he's going to try and smash, for example. Okay, because that loses him the game. Or you could say that, oh, you shouldn't have sucker punched the Togedemaru. You should have just straight up knock off because there's no way he's going to just sack it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like those are all subjective plays, and when you're Pepe and you think, oh shit, I've gotten lucky here. I just need to play it out. I feel like he sort of miscalculated in his head how much of a threat the Caracosta was and how much the recall and toxic damage would rack up over time. I feel like, yeah, he might have been just clicking a bit, you know what I mean? So I don't think you can fault anybody. You could just sort of say, meh, and sort of shrug your shoulders at it.
Okay, so yeah. I think that'll put us on to game 3. Again, we got 6 replays. Let's keep it going. Game 3 is stupid. It's stupid and I don't like it, but it's not more than what I expected from either of these guys, which isn't to say that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just they are both people who always go out and bring weird stuff, often are fishing for matchup, often are just using like some crazy shit. Pepe brings actually like the most standard team of this set, I think. That of like maybe not of the set. I'm sorry, the most standard team I've seen him use in a set. He does not really go out for a team that looks balanced and reasonable like this with spikes and a solid win con in SD Combustion. Katut brings Sun.
Basically.
Katut brings Sun, which is a pretty unseen weather and absolutely like gets blown back by Aurorus and Abomasnow. Let's be like if there is an Aurorus... If there is an Aurorus, Katut loses, but that's kind of the thing with Sun. You fish for some matchup.
Like if I was Pepe, I would not even call it Sun. I'd call it like grass spam balance. That's what it looks like to me. Like,
but it's not. It's Sun. He has 3 chlorophyll abusers and 2, maybe like 3 sunsetters.
Yeah, it's almost like Sun balance to me. Like if you look at it from
okay. It's a little less hyper offensive. He's got no fire type. Instead, he's got a 3rd grass type using Blossom, which isn't known for its offensive prowess under Sun. It's more of a fat setup sweeper. So yeah, it is kind of
Yeah,
different, but it's like
I'll
a
tell you what,
really
actually.
weird Sun team, and which is interesting because most Sun teams I see that are weird, they're weird specifically because they're trying to beat Auroras and
There's just some,
Abomasnow.
yeah,
But I don't
yeah,
necessarily like that because I think they always still lose to opposing weather, or like this team also kind of just loses to Trick Room, and Executor, or other like random hard matchups. I don't really think you can
yeah.
prep for those. I don't think going weird like that is better. You should really just focus on like, okay, I'm gonna
Doing what you
lose
do
those
well.
matchups. How do I win like every other matchup?
Yeah, yeah.
But in this
I
case,
think
Katut
basically,
has the matchup, so like, what are you gonna do? Like Pepe's grass resist is a non-eviolite combustion whose fire type attack kills him really fast because it's flare blitz with lots of recoil, and Katut has an aftermath mon potentially with helmet we never even see. Um,
yeah,
Other than that, like Pepe really does not have any saving graces in this matchup. Like Frostlass
yeah.
hits half the team super effectively, but Katut's non-grass types all like kind of handle
Beat it.
Frostlass, and he's gonna get up rocks fairly easily. And Pepe does not have remove. Like Pepe really has nothing in this matchup. And if you watch the game, like there is almost nothing scary. Basically, Katut gets up rocks. He plays nicely to get up Sun. Like he plays well. He gets up Sun, but he's also taunting and making sure stuff doesn't happen. He sword stances with Leafeon on turn 8, and Leafeon proceeds to get 4 kills, and then weaken the Combuskin to the point where it can't sweep because it's going to die to Aftermath or Flare Blitz recoil or whatever, as Combustion gets up a sword stance. The only scary bit was potentially if Pepe had sacked Mesprit on Leafeon's Z move, Combuskin would have gotten a free sword stance pretty much. Even then, I
Yeah,
wouldn't have expected it to win because Katut still has a healthy Regirock, potentially Chople. No, it's going to be Heat Rock. Never mind. But he still has the Scun Tank, and then he still has the ability to make Combuskin to kill itself with Flare Blitz and have one thing in the back to beat a Alolan Persian. Like there was,
exactly.
it would have had to been special Combuskin and hit every move,
Basically,
and
yeah.
not been Life Orb, I guess, but still somehow managed to kill every mon. Are you eating chips? Because it's very audible.
Oh, no, those are Tic Tacs. Don't worry about those.
Oh, you're shaking Tic Tacs. Oh my god, I thought you were eating chips. Dude, shake them away from the
No.
mic. What do you?
No, it's far away from the mic. My mic just picks it up. That's weird. Yeah, but what I was gonna say about the game, I just think about it like I saw Pepe Juice. Well, Pepe Juice is basically brought Firewater Grass team without the grass type, and all the grass types are on K-Tut's team.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what I see here, and like I feel like Pepe all in on Combuskin winning, but then basically this game is a showcase of why Combuskin is not a top tier threat. Like on paper, Combuskin is a top tier threat, but this game specifically proves why it's not.
Yeah.
It's not bulky enough to set up. It's not powerful enough, even at +2, to break through Regirock, right? Its main stab kills
Well,
itself.
we saw its low kick, so at +2, it was gonna break the Regirock. That's not the problem. And here's the thing: like we could have seen Combuskin at the very least be scary because what Pepe does is on the Leafeon after Sun is gone. Okay, he switches in Mesprit as the sun runs out. Leafeon does Leaf Blade, Mesprit's at 48%. Okay. Leafeon does Leaf Blade again, Mesprit is at only 15%. It's still alive after rocks. So he U-turns on Leafeon, goes to Quillfish to get the Intimidate. Right? Now, wait for this. He taunts the Leafeon so it can't Sword Stance. Leafeon is at -1, it can't Sword Stance. This is when he switches in Combuskin to set up. I just assumed that because he specifically got Mesprit weakened here, instead of just sacking Quillfish, it was so that he would then switch out Combuskin, make sure Mesprit dies to the Leafeon's very obvious Z move, and then goes back into Combuskin to set up. But instead, like after specifically weakening Mesprit, he just goes hard Combuskin and takes 83% from a -1 Z double edge. I'm assuming probably double edge. Maybe it's return or I don't know what else. I haven't calced, but I'm going to assume double edge. Like it could have at least been scarier. And if Combuskin was still only taking a double edge, still at like 50% or something, it would not have won. Well, actually, it might. Like if he played perfectly around Katut trying to bait the Z move with Skuntank so that Skuntank could get Sucker into Aftermath or something, there
Yeah,
was still like some potential. And if Combuskin could like kill things without killing itself with Flare Blitz, which I don't think it could have, because he'd have to kill Bill Awesome and Victory Bell in one hit, which would require Flare
yeah,
Blitz. And then if you use the Z moves on those, then you don't have your Z move for Skunk, and I don't think it works. But you could have at least seen Combuskin like almost win and call it close. And like, yeah, Pepe had some, but he never had anything. And this matchup was just like Katut had a very good Sun pick. And honestly, if you look back at the other teams Pepe brought, they were also very Sun weak. Like, I think Katut could have won any of these games on matchup with the Sun pick. Sun is not common. Sun does not match up every team. I think like anything in my game or TJ's, anything I or TJ brought at least had a chance to beat a Sun team. Well, maybe not my game 2 team, but it just happened that like I don't know if he scouted and noticed that Pepe's like always weak to Sun and never uses Auroras or something, but it turned out to be an excellent pick, and I can't really fault that. Yeah, Sun won.
Yeah, I mean, if you identify a weakness in somebody else's building habits, it's like, for example, they don't brought an Auroras, they don't bring Sun checks, they don't bring Kangaskhan, right?
Yeah.
Why not like chase that matchup? You know, if you're about it, you know, if you're about like trying to chase a matchup, you know, why not go for it? You know, it's a risk in this case worth taking. You know, but I just sort of I look at the game and I can't help but feel Pepe could have done more, like done better with what he had, right? Because if you think about it, if he gets rocks and spikes up, Combuskin does a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right? And he has also, if you consider it, he either has Darkinium Z on the Persian Alola. Did we see the item on the Persian Alola?
Yeah, one sec. It takes a hit. He used lefties earlier in the set. Yeah, it was also lefties Persian. So yeah, it's Z move Combustion.
So it must have been Healing Wish on the Messenger, right? If you think about it, the combination of spikes.
Yeah, and Combuskin doing some work and then Healing Wish. Yeah, you could potentially see something, but Katut like played the early games smart. If Katut played really passive and Pepe got to do what he want, then even the Sun pick probably would not have been enough. But you can see Pepe. If we go to the first turn, let's see what happens. So it's a Combuskin. Pepe leads Combuskin. Really weird choice. I don't know why. Because you would expect Regirock to be the lead, and then he immediately switches out on Regirock. Anyway, because that sets up rocks for free. He knows Persian's going to taunt, so he gets good chip that will actually be useful for killing it later. He goes hard Persian on the foul play. He taunts the other Persian. He immediately taunts the Quillfish, even though he could have gotten a free switch into a Sun Sweeper. He takes the time to taunt the Quillfish. He gets the perfect parting shot out. Like, I genuinely think at turn 7, because Katut didn't screw up early game, or because Pepe didn't play immaculately early game, I don't think there was anything else that was going to happen.
Yeah, I think you can attribute this game more to how well Pepe played it. I mean, Katut played it, than how Pepe played it. I feel like Pepe didn't do anything wrong, but Katut just did more.
He did he did have a parting shotted Mesprit in, which was a perfect setup opportunity for Leafeon to set up a Swords Dance. But at the same time, no matter what he got parting shotted, one of Katut's Sun Sweepers was gonna come in. Like if it was Frostlash, then Leafeon's not setting up, but Victory Bell's just gonna click Solar Beam. So
Victory Bell at that point won the game.
Okay, let's. Okay, it's already like 40 minutes. Let's wrap up the set thoughts though.
Wrap up. Right. What's the other series? It was you and TJ, right?
Yeah, okay. And I do think our series maybe has somewhat better examples of like fishing for matchup with weird teams and the way that you like passive teams need certain matchups. And I think there's like honestly, I do think there's better examples of all of this, but what these guys have is like their unique kind of gimmicky styles, and Katut like really hit the nail on the head with the third game counter team, I think, and brought it home. So that's a win for Katut, who is advancing into semifinals, and on to myself versus TJ, where I can provide a bit of the insider information, such as game 1. I'm really fucking weak to Calm Mind Pom Pom. I am like, you look at my team, you're like, oh, everything loses to Carmine Pom Pom. How could he possibly get out of this? I actually had a pretty decent shot to win this game, but at team preview, I was like, fuck, I'm just not handling Carmine Pom Pom. Like, my intent for handling Carmine Birds was Kuno. But it is not good versus Revelation Dance Pom Pom, and that was just stupid of me. And let's be clear, like I have said multiple times, I'm not a fan of my building. I think my building is terrible right now. I think I played the set as well as I've played pretty much any set in my life. But game one, I was terrified after this because, oh fuck, my building is not good enough. Because anyway, Carmine Pom Pom is really just kind of the standout thing in team preview, but I got some threats. I have Articuno, and TJ has like the same thing that Katut did, which is like a Metang and 5 mons that lose to Articuno. So that's fun. You want to take the lead on? Oh, also, this is also a nice mirror. Turn 1, I knock off the Metang with my Caracostet, just like early game Pepe knocked off Katut's Metang, surprisingly. It was a surprise knockoff Mawa, and I had a surprise knockoff Caracosta, because you don't see defensive Caracosta much nowadays. And to be fair, if I was defensive Regirock, I would not have been so Carmine Pop-Up weak.
Yeah.
I brought the one rock type that loses to Carmine. Ah!
I mean, okay, so here's my depiction of this game is sort of like, I don't get what TJ's doing, but I know what you're doing, and I felt like you had more of a like, how do I put it? Like, I guess you played a bit more efficiently, and I also think TJ brought, let's put it this way, the wrong team. I don't think this is the type of team that I'd bring versus you.
Really?
It looks. No, I wouldn't bring this type of team because I look at the team. I thought initially that it had to be fake out Kanga, like. But it wasn't. It was like it was the sub
toxic Kangaskhan set.
Kangaskhan set, exactly. And if he was the standard set, he would have won the game quite easily. But
well, no. As soon as I knew he wasn't standard, I could actually afford to like. Oh no, I get Caracosta. I could afford. I would have played around a different. But yeah, I am also pretty weak to Kangaskhan. Normally I wouldn't, like, I let Caracosta get toxic turn 1 when I was sure he'd get up Stealth Rock. Like, as soon as I got toxic turn 1, if he was standard Kangaskhan, I also kind of lost to that. I need Caracosta to not get toxic for that. But really, I think it kind of makes sense in that he has like a solid team that also has certain ways in which it fishes for matchup, and that's like what I would do versus myself. Because like I've said, like I've shown, I can have some weird matchup difficulties, and he's got like between the Fat Kanga and the Carmine Pom Pom and the Lilligant. He's got things that can fish for matchup, so I do think it's not the worst pick. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I look at you, and I don't think you're the guy who would just bring like Fat Stall, and that Kanga set is designed for Fat Stall, just as well. Like, you know, I don't think Pom Pom, for example, isn't the best pick versus you. It works, and it obviously worked in that game, but I wouldn't say it's. I'd say the thing that I had the most trouble with, like in my head, was the Mesprit, because when you're playing somebody who is inconsistent with their team style or team preference, and they run offense, that you tend to use offense more. You generally want the most reliable Scarfer possible. Like, you want something that you know can come in and get a revenge kill, okay? Or even, you know, not even as fast Scarfer.
Interesting.
Like, you don't want to go like, you don't go for like your primates.
Okay, but he has a slow Scarf Mesprit that could definitely be a problem if I'm bringing some kind of crazy sweeper like a like a Bill Awesome, really. Scarf Mesprit not being a great pick versus Bill Awesome. Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, like if you brought a I don't know, just to throw something random out there, like a Scarf Absol, suddenly Mesprit becomes a liability in this game, and then you have a lot of impetus. So I think mainly how TJ tried to approach the game was a bit confusing to me, and I felt like he was almost confused in the game about which plays he should make, and I felt like you should have won the game if you didn't miss or you didn't get hacks. Let's put it that way.
No, I
Use the
didn't
hurricane.
really. I'll get into it because I have like like in the game I calculate like all the exact odds, so I can get into that more. I do not think ultimately that was really hacks. So early in the game, like TJ gets his pom pom in, but takes some solid chip for my throat chop and then drain punch from Hitmonchan. And at that point, like, but he gets off the hurricane. It does 58% to Hitmonchan. I'm like, fuck, he actually has offensive pom pom. It's not like defensive or anything because it's his only potential removal. So, or no, it's Skunk is, but it's his other potential removal. So it maybe wasn't offensive. No, it's offensive pom pom. I go hard Articuno on it and then immediately go to my pom pom, just try to scout for Revelation Dance. As he switches it out of my Kuno, probably expecting me to be something weird because I hard switched into a pom pom. And then he like doubles around to get Metang in to set up Stealth Rock, as I'm like, okay, I chipped the Metang because I need it chipped because at this point it actually dies to Articuno. It cannot check Articuno anymore, so that's pretty nice. I get off Stealth Rock, but I do think at this point, you said TJ was playing inconsistently. I might have like miscalculated what I need to do because the cost of chipping Metang was letting me get at rocks. The cost of removing rocks, so I still had the Kuno, was letting his pom pom roost up and calm mind, and I did not efficiently prevent that. And this is where his pom pom just goes ham. I bring in Caracosta. It turns out he's not Revelation Dance, but because I'm not Rock Move on Caracosta, I'm running Scald, Knock, Aqua Jet. Again, huge oversight. If I was Rock Move, I'd be fine. He's able to chip my Caracosta. I don't get a Scald Burn, which would have been huge here. But I get Aqua Jet and... No, I'm sorry. I do get a Scald Burn, but he's Lum. I totally forgot about that. He's Lum, Calm Mind, Pom Pom, which is really cool because you actually do check this with Toxic a lot of the time. So I do like that set, assuming he's got Z Lilligan. And then this is the first instance where, like, quote-unquote hacks kind of came into it, but I really don't think it's that bad. I bring in my Scarf Skuntank versus his offensive Oricorio Pom Pom, and he's at 55%. I have a reasonable roll to kill him, but me missing out on this, like, I wouldn't necessarily go all the way to call it hacks. It was game defining. If I kill him, I think I win the game. At that point, like, I've got my healthy Scarf Skunk, I've got my Kuno ready to just break his entire team. His Kanga's still annoying, his Lilligant's still maybe scary, but overall I'm doing really well. The roll is, I do 47 to 56%, and he is at 55. And, like, there's just no way around this. If I had, like, if he wasn't Lum and I could have Scald Burned him, you know, if I got, like, better Aqua Jet or Scald rolls, but, like, nothing I got was super below average or anything, and ultimately I cannot get the max roll with Skuntank. He gets to Hurricane me and deal 86%, and now my Scarf Skuntank's almost dead, and he gets to Pursuit Trap it. And at this point, the game's just like real unfriendly.
Yeah. It was a game that I think could have gone either way, honestly. I think you played better than TJ in this game, and given the specific matchup,
see,
like you were given,
I think I made more. I think I made more plays, but I don't think TJ played bad at all. He did this like straight. I'm gonna get up rocks. I'm gonna use his knee to remove rocks to get in my Calm Mind Pom Pom. My Calm Mind Pom Pom kills the Caracosta and then gets the Skuntank out of the way while still being alive to be a threat. And without the Scarf Skuntank, my Scarf Mesprit kind of just goes in.
I don't discount how TJ played, but I don't think he played badly. I wouldn't say that. I would say that you just played better to secure a win condition. I think TJ had a win condition as well, but I don't think he played it to the extent that, you know, you played it. You sort of played the mid game like quite well, or the like early game, depending on how you want to define it. But overall, I think
I still kind of let his pom pom do its thing, though. I don't know. I may be trying to overcorrect on bias or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
My Scarf Skunk is also like a really big threat to his team because his Dark Resist is just his own skunk, and if I get to eliminate that, then my Scarf Skunk really goes in. But what happened? Yeah. So after that situation where my Scarf Skunk goes down, I basically sack Hitmonchan just to eliminate, just to get some chip on his Skuntank. And then I go into my offensive Kuno on his Scarf Mesprit, because his Scarf Mesprit practically just wins right now. And his Scarf Mesprit is doing 43% to me with Psychic, which is roostable unless he gets a Spadef drop.
Drop, yeah.
Which is really critical for later in the game. So he gets his Mesprit out, but my Kuno gets back to 100% as he switches out of Mesprit, and then I kill my tank, but I use up my Sky Strike, which means I can no longer use Supersonic Sky Strike on his Kangaskhan, which is scary. At this point, I still think he's basic physically offensive Kangaskhan, which could have potentially won the game. So I go hard Oricorio on it just to like try to get some chip damage and whatever. He reveals that he's like fat Kanga. I get some Air Slash chip on it, and then I go Blossom and Quiver Dance and get Toxic. There's really nothing I can do about this. Basically, what happens is I get to chip the Kangaskhan. I get to remove the Skuntank, so that's not a factor anymore because his Skuntank is faster than my Kuno. I am a modest Articuno. And then this is kind of where the other bit of like potential misfortune comes into play. I miss a Hurricane. He sacks Oricorio, brings his Kangaskhan in on my Articuno. All I have is Articuno and Blossom's at 24% and Toxic and slower than all of his team and dies. I basically have to win the game with Articuno. I can do that potentially. I can potentially beat Scarf Mesprit if it doesn't Spadef drop me twice, as like I get Spadef dropped and then I go back into Blossom to get removed, and then he Spadef drops me again. Or if it crits me, it can also win. Those aren't in his favor. Like, he has a decent amount of Psychics, but remember, I'm also Pressure, so it's not super in his favor. But the combination of Sleep and Quiver Lilligant, plus I have to like beat that while staying out of range of Mesprit, and the fact that I'm Freeze Dry, not Frost Breath, and I have to potentially hit Hurricanes on it, it's really dicey if I can beat those two. It's not for certain, because Sleep is a broken status.
I think that's all that needs to really be said on that game. But
so that's already tricky. What happens though is he goes Kangaskhan, and because my Articuno, let me get the exact count. Because my Articuno is modest. Oh no, I can't get the exact set. I don't have the set anymore. Hurricane basically like almost certainly KOs him. He's at 44%. I believe the minimum was like 42. I'd have to go back and check. It's super in my favor. Very heavily a roll in my favor, but I end up just missing Hurricane. And because he gets Toxic me, I can no longer outstall the Mesprit plus the Lilligant, and I lose the game. There was really just nothing to be done there. I had chances, but I don't really want to say I just lost to hacks, because A, Sleep and Scarf Mesprit and having Healing Wish probably still makes it potentially dicey, and B, he had a good counter team with Pom Pom. I'm not going to be like, oh, I lost to hacks, that was a game, because I already brought a team that was weak to his shit, so I don't feel like I deserved the game or anything, so I'll only really be upset if I was like, I really should have had that game and I totally outplayed him and my team was better and all that, but I'm not mad about this game.
I think overall, if you just look at the game, it's just sort of like, it would have been nice to see it play out like naturally, but that the premature Hurricane miss sort of just like put a damper on it. I felt like it would have been like nice to see how TJ would have gone about killing the Articuno, given that he had like, as you said, Sleep. You also had the Healing Wish Mesprit that was probably modest as well. It would have been cool to see how TJ played around that specific threat, because in theory, given no like hacks quotation marks, you win that matchup, or you win that like 1v2 if you can count it as that.
If everything goes perfectly between Hurricanes and Sleep and Healing Wish and Spadef drop and crits. And ultimately, I'm not mad, and this was a pretty good game. I liked it. I liked what happened here. So game 2, I know this is super long already. We are at 54 minutes, but fortunately, we can pretty much skip over game 2. Game 2, TJ brings full reign. I perfectly respect this. He's a game up. I am notoriously wishy-washy in matchups. I have gotten counter-teamed by Rain in the past, although not recently, like months ago. I think actually the last time I faced Rain in tournament, I totally beat the dude. I think it was like Skipcan or someone in a seasonal. He brings Rain, and it is a solid Rain team. It's not like weird gimmicky Sun. So you know what it can do.
Yeah.
Stop blowing into your mic.
The main three. Yeah.
He brought a very basic standard main three, like, Kabu, Ludicolo, Quillfish, Mesprit, Volby, and then the filler in his case is Kangaskhan, which is interesting, but I think it's fine. Like, Kangaskhan is a fat thing with priority, makes sense to me. Unfortunately for him, I had a Rotom Frost, which is pretty annoying. I had a Water Absorb Quagsire, which just beats Quillfish and Kabutops, no questions asked, although Unaware also kind of messed with them. I had a Spadef Roselia, which does a number in checking Ludicolo. I had a fat Kangaskhan, and I had a Scarf Swift Swim Kabutops, which outspeeds all of his Rain Sweepers. And I just won the game on matchup, and that is all there is to it. I never even brought the Kabutops out in the game. I never even needed it. I just had matchup. And that's what happens when you fish for matchup sometimes. And like I said, I think I respect it from TJ's point of view. I really can't say it's an unreasonable pick. It's not one I would do. I'm not the kind of guy who fishes for matchup. I know some people look down on it, but I really was in the game like, yeah, okay. I respect it at the time, but I also had the thought, thank you, now I have a much better chance of winning because I don't have to beat him in 2 serious matches. But yeah, that was literally just he brought Rain, and oops.
And you just sort of won. Yeah, that's it. That's the risk. That's the risk of fishing for matchup, and that's essentially what you're trying to pay off. Because at no point in that game I ever thought TJ has a chance here. Like that didn't ever cross.
That perfectly described. Yeah, I mean. It worked for Katut. It didn't work for TJ. So game 3.
Yep.
Game 3. Yep. This is when you were earlier. For the very first game we looked over talking about like how passive teams function. I was also thinking like that. I think a lot of that really applies to game 3 because I brought the most passive team I think I've used in a tournament in a very long time. I brought something that is not my normal style, and I didn't really think TJ would be ready for. I thought TJ had like a reasonable grip on what I'd been bringing, so I brought something weird. Which is like almost semi-stall with like a fat Clef and a fat Regirock and a fat Skuntank and a fat Pom Pom and a fat Poliwrath. Okay, no, Skuntank's offensive, but it's still a fat Mon. And a Frostlass. And they never actually reveal the Frostlass's set. And I will talk about it later. I never reveal the full Frostlass set. I will talk about it later on Hijad's Gimmick Corner.
Okay.
Because it is a kind of fun thing, and it's like a weird fat team, and you should probably give your unbiased thoughts on team matchup first, like as someone just kind of looking at it as a spectator.
Okay, so basically in this type of game, in this type of tier, I typically try and avoid what you brought because it is so passive and it just lets the opponent do what they want to do on the field, right? Because you have so many things that don't just that deal damage. If the guy wanted to set up spikes and then has a normal spam core, for example, or if the guy wants to get up spikes and has 2 grass types, like a grass spam core, you just lose the game. Like there's nothing you can really do about that apart from maybe you can make more efficient plays and over the course of the game, just chip at things. But it usually gives the impetus to the guy that's putting the offensive pressure on. So that's why I would try and avoid your type of team. But the reason why your type of team exists in the first place is that it's extremely reliable, right? You know that you have a switch in for the majority of the metagame, right? Mm-hmm. So you know that if you trade 1 for 1 on every single Pokemon, you'll win the trades because you have the counters and they don't, right? And I think that's what ended up happening in the game.
Something close to that, yeah.
Yeah, like it was weird to witness because if I was like looking from an outsider looking in, I thought TJ was going to win this game because I thought that your team was too passive. Like straight up, I thought eventually TJ would just he'd whittle one Pokemon in one way. Like for example, he would whittle here's what I thought would happen. I thought he'd bring Stoutland in on Clef, for example. You would want to keep the Clef to keep your Articuno check.
or one of your Articuno checks, he'd superpower the Regirock a couple of times, right? And then eventually what would end up happening is that Stoutland via superpowering the Regirock, and then just by being alive would force essentially your Articuno checks to be extremely pressured, and then you'd just eventually lose to that duo. Considering, or like, if TJ managed to contain the other Pokemon that you had, that's what I think would have happened. But what ended up happening was that he never got into the situations where, you know, he got Stoutland in for free and got a free superpower or a free frustration in any case, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's generally what happened, I think.
Yeah, so I do agree with your analysis, and to me, this team is less about that whole passive thing and fishing for matchup. I think it's more consistent than that. Still has issues with those kind of like spikes and strong spam cores or something, but I think it's a little better than that because of the way I handle those kinds of matchups by basically having a lot of protect and double removal. I have double defog on Pom Pom and Skunk, which I don't think I ever defog in the game. I'm not sure, but I have double defog, and I have protect on Regirock, on Poliwrath, and on Frostlass. That I was gonna reveal the gimmick later, but yeah, it's actually a sub Wisp Protect Hex Frostlass, which to me does like, it was something I just kind of thought up as like, what if Protect Frostlass because Togedemaru always U-turns as I switch out Frostlass, and then it turned into sub Protect Wisp Hex, and it is so good at breaking down so many people's teams. Like, I've never really had a terrible matchup with it. It's always been like somewhat of a threat. It's hard to set up a sub with. It is a really difficult Pokemon to use, and I wouldn't recommend it for most. I wouldn't recommend the set for most teams. But because you always have this kind of offensive out with potential pressure, I've never felt too passive, because the kind of Pokemon that like almost impossible to use because it's so hard to get a sub with, but you're never lacking an offensive threat because like it never has a bad matchup. Like U-turn type Null, I guess, would kind of be what they'd have to have, and no one runs it. Those like Munchlax, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of where I came from going into this. And Stoutland is a threat, but it can only get in on a single Pokemon, and then needs to get the perfect superpower prediction. Needs to do it multiple times because Protect Regirock really racks up that healing. And that's kind of where I came from with this team. And yeah, we've talked about the teams for a really long time compared to the game, but I do think the team matchup is really interesting here.
Yeah.
Maybe even compared to what
that's generally what I was looking at, because I was thinking Sandslash, you can't really say it's a threat. Like, you had Poliwrath for it, it doesn't get any kills on anything. So apart from maybe the what's it called, the Fat Bird, the Pom Pom, right? That's the only thing you can really say Sandslash threatens.
And Pom Pom is actually hidden power fighting.
Exactly. So it's like the Sandslash, you can't really say that that's an offensive threat. The Togedemaru. Again, like, Togedemaru isn't necessarily known for its ability.
Togedemaru is actually, in my opinion, his second biggest offensive threat here. More than Stoutland, less than Jellicent. Taunt, Wisp, Jellicent. Taunt, Wisp, Jellicent practically 1v1s the whole team. Kuno gets checked by Clef, Regirock, and Frostlass, like, kind of well, and Scarf Skunk can do some revenge killing. Stoutland really strong, but needs to get those predictions right. Scarf Togue, as you can see, I have no electric immunity or resist. I rely a lot on Helmet Pom Pom, and I rely on Lefty's Regirock, and I rely on Scarf Skunk doing a bit of threatening out and pursuit trapping as well. And I have Vacuum Wave Poliwrath, but the Scarf Toad can really like put in some work in some specific scenarios. And honestly, like, I almost rebuilt this team because it was Togedemaru week. This fat team because it was somehow Togedemaru week.
Yeah, imagine that.
So like getting into the game, like for example, turn 1, I lead Poliwrath, he leads Girder, and I immediately like need to switch out and keep my Poliwrath's leftovers. Losing leftovers isn't really an option for Protect Toxic Poliwrath, and I know he just wants to knock me off. So I'm kind of like, I didn't really see a better scenario than just losing my Rocky Helmet turn 1, and at that point I was genuinely scared of Scarf Toad. Not having the helmet for it is not fun. Fortunately, then turn 2, he switches Girder out of Pom Pom like you do, and I click Hidden Power because I was pretty sure he'd go to Togue or Sandslash, and I automatically get like a 43% chip on the Togue, and I was a lot happier after that.
Yeah, I think because if you think about it, like after TJ got the chip on the Poliwrath and like that kill, as well as the kill on the what's it called, the Oricorio, the idea then would be to have like a full health, Togedemaru in the back so that you can clean with Iron Head.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking is that he was playing more turn by turn, as I said, and he maybe thought that the Skuntank wasn't Scarf. Maybe he thought it was like a bulky set. So he was thinking maybe if it's Sucker Punches plus Aftermath, Togedemaru isn't going to be of use anyway. So then like he's more liberal, I guess, with his use of Togedemaru. Like, it's just going to get revenge killed by Skuntank anyway.
Yeah, well, at the same time, he doesn't really have a great switch in for Pom Pom. He's just as weak to Calm on Pom Pom as I was in the first game. Like, he has several checks. He has the Togue, and he has the Articuno, and he has the Alolan Sandslash. But between Revelation Dance and Dance and Hidden Power, Pom Pom like kind of just hits all of those guys anyway.
Oh.
And that's
Rev Dance?
No. Between the potential for Rev Dance, it's not Rev Dance. So in this case, Articuno is his check, but like, and even Jellicent can beat it. But like, Pom Pom is. This is why it's a top threat, because it's actually like really weird to prep for, and that most of your resists get conditionally hit. He has Kuno and Sandslash and Togue and Jellicent, but depending on my set, and even with a single common set, all of them can lose, which is weird. So yeah, early game, he gets the Togue chipped, and I get a Roost play correctly, so my Pom Pom is at high health, which is really nice. He also reveals Frost Breath Articuno, which is pretty interesting. I don't see that too much.
Yeah, it's probably to check Pom Poms, honestly.
Yeah, probably 4 Pom Poms considering how weak he is, so actually, yeah, that makes sense. I threw out a T-Wave with Clefairy because I really like T-Wave Clef as a partner to a fast Hex user. That should be kind of obvious. And right here, he was later in the game like, he wasn't happy about getting paralyzed with his Alolan Sandslash. Should I go hard Poliwrath? Not really sure what I would have been afraid of. And like as we play turn by turn, he gets his Girder toxic and chipped. I make a double switch to get Regirock in on his Articuno, and he decides to go Sandslash on the Regirock, which means that I get to put it down to like 30%. As he gets up rocks and toxics my Regirock, but never removes hazards with it critically. So like at this point, hazards are all but guaranteed to stay, and his Articuno is kind of chipped. And like already by turn 13, my really passive team has 4 of his Mons like under 40% and almost dead. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I think. Just TJ's team just. Like, if you think about it, just wasn't bulky enough to handle like a long semi-stall game, and that's not something that you can like actively like prepare for. Some teams just have that ability to like last forever.
Well, it
like,
is something you can actively prepare for, but it's weird. It's a different kind of thing to actively prepare for, because he has like a defensive utility Scarf where he's got a fat Girder and a fat Kuno and a fat Alolan Sandslash, but without reliable recovery and with that Rock's weakness, it's not necessarily going to matter. And he also has a bit of an annoying matchup. Like, Rock's Regirock is genuinely annoying for him because it beats his Spinner and Alolan Sandslash unless it gets toxic and chipped in like a really bad way, but I wasn't going to let that happen. And it beats, I'm assuming his Articuno has Defog as his secondary removal, and it beats that too. So like, it's genuinely annoying for him to keep Rocks off, but with Rocks, like your Stoutland gets more chipped, and your Kuno gets super chipped, and your Sandslash gets more chipped, and I don't know, very difficult. And by turn 13, I was pretty gosh darn confident just with how weak his team was.
Yeah, no, I'd say the thing with TJ's team is that I think you almost nailed the, how do you put it? You hit the nail on the head with the matchup. Because I think what TJ was thinking in his head is that there's no way this dude brings fat. There's no way this dude brings fat. There's no way this dude brings fat. So he brought like a role compressed team with a decent offensive core, and he said, okay, if he brings offense, I have the fastest guard.
Maybe. I don't want to spend too much time on like what people might have been thinking when we don't know. But yeah, like I do not bring teams like this. Like I said, it was an out of nowhere pick. So
he has the faster scaffer and the faster breaker, and he has like a decent defensive core. So he's sort of thinking, I can handle whatever he wants to throw at me if he throws offense. But because your team had so much like bulk, just fatness, and it also like it wasn't passive bulk either. It was sort of like you could do damage to him progressively.
My stuff were actual threats to his team.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just think that mon for mon, your team was more threatening to his than his was to you. That's how I would put it.
Mm.
Also, TJ should also lose for the fact that he has even HP Articuno. But yeah,
oh yeah, he had even HP. Okay, so skipping ahead a little more, his girder dies, and then we basically trade. I take out his Togue with Vacuum Wave Polyrath, but I get Polyrath pretty chipped. Polyrath's at like 46%. I protect. It's at 52%, and here I make a mispredict that, in all honesty, I didn't necessarily have to do. He goes Stoutland and superpowers on my Polyrath, and I protect. And okay, Polyrath's at 52%, and he's choice locked into superpower. I could have switched out knowing that he's choice locked into superpower and saved Polyrath. And why that's important is that Polyrath is faster than a taunt Jellicent, and it can toxic it. I'm running a good amount of creep. His Jellicent just won't be faster. He'd have to be max timid. But after thinking about it for a long time, I figure I think TJ's gonna want to double out, because obviously he's locked into superpower, and Clefairy can come in on that, and soft-boiled. But even if he doesn't, I decided that Polyrath is like my least useful mon. I can still handle Jellicent. I will let Polyrath die. In hindsight, the play should have been Skuntank. If he stays in superpowers, if he wants to kill my Skuntank, he's going to have to take Aftermath. And either way, I'm going to at least get off a Pursuit on that -1 defense stat. Like, he's either taking a Pursuit plus the Aftermath, or he's switching out and taking the Pursuit with -1 defense. That should have been the play. Scarf Skuntank loses to Fat Jellicent, even if he's not Colbur, because it turns out he was physically defensive instead of Spadef. So Scarf Skuntank like wasn't useful versus it. It can still revenge kill Articuno, but I have Calm Mind Clefairy and Frostlass for that, and Regirock is still healthy, so like it's not needed. And this is what I consider my biggest misplay of the game. Not one significant enough because I did not really need Polyrath, but like I don't even Vacuum Wave the Stoutland. I click Toxic because I think he's going to double the Jellicent, and Polyrath goes down. Yeah, that's kind of my one thing if I would have done it differently. Otherwise, after that I go Skuntank, and I get to kill the Stoutland and take a lot of chip, and then he reveals that he's physically defensive, taunt, Wisp, Jellicent, but because he reveals that he's Scald very early on and not Hex, I can safely go Frostlass. I Wisp the Jellicent, I Hex it, it dies. I Wisp the Articuno, I Hex it, it gets chipped into being able to deal damage with Skunk, and then in the end, because his Sand Slash was so low, it died to rocks, I was able to just, without a care, sack the rest of my team, go Calm Mind Clefairy, and know that I'd have to get incredibly unlucky for Articuno to beat this Calm Mind Clefairy. Because the thing about Frost Breath is, because it always crits, it can ignore my Spadef boost, but it can't ignore my Spadef boosts with a crit, if you know what I mean. Like, Frost Breath has low damage, so that when it always crits, it has like an average attack power. So that lets it ignore boosts, but it doesn't let it crit and be like a 180 power attack, or it's 1.5 times. It doesn't let it be like a 135.
It loses scariness.
Yeah, it loses its scariness as a crit, because I know he's always going to be doing consistent damage with it. So he'd have to like crit and confuse a hurricane, whatever, and I didn't really have a better win con for that. So Calm Mind Clefairy ends up clutching it out. Calm Mind T-Wave Clefairy, so shout outs to Oras. And that was the game. It was a really close set, and honestly, I'm a little happy I sacked Polyrath because it ended up with a very close like 1-0 victory on Game 3, which is always a good thing to see. And anything else on the game? Because I kind of talked about the whole end of the game. So if you had anything you wanted to hit on.
Yeah, there's not really much to talk about there, is there? I just think, well, I was just saying earlier that, in theory, I would have preferred TJ in this matchup. I would, if I had to, if my life was on the line and I had to bet on one person in this matchup, I'd probably bet on TJ just because he has, the offensive pressure. Okay, and I thought, okay, if he brings it right in, and he brings the correct, he makes the correct plays, the correct offensive plays, given that you don't try and do anything stupid and say, you stay clef on a Stoutland, for example, considering no crazy stuff happens, I think TJ was in a better position at matchup. But if you look at the true intricacies of the battle, you look at the rest of your team versus the Stoutland, if you look mon for mon at the individual sets and how threatening they are to TJ's team, I think overall you just had
a strong base to play off of.
Yeah, just a stronger base to play off. Yeah, and that's basically how.
And sub protect Wisp process was really, really terrifying for his team. And I admit it is hard to see exactly where it would set up, but it does. You find these individual opportunities, and that alone to me was I am always going to have an out in this matchup if I can play it well enough. It has been, let's see. Oh, good. An hour and 15 minutes. Let's hit Gimmick Corner real quick.
Do you want to hit Gimmick Corner, or do you want to save that for next week?
Your call. Do you have something you're burning to get to? Otherwise, I can tide them over with something
Honestly,
small.
I don't really have that much or that good of a set, so it's
All right, that's fine. I'll share something really quick. For this last week of Discord Premier League, I fought Tasker, and I brought a team which had choice specs Simisear. I'll link the replay along with all 6 of these circuit replays we talked about in the description. Spec Simisear is really cool. It is kind of matchup based, but so is Simisear in general. And the thing is, Nasty Plot Simisear are getting really popular recently because it's I don't really prep for fire types, and my team's all loose to it and has Grass Knot to break through all the fire checks. And I thought, what if instead of breaking through all the fire checks, you just gave it specs so that if they don't have good enough fire checks, it just wins. And it really does kind of just smack some matchups around. It can do kind of poorly. If you're facing a team with sturdy enough fire checks that I also can't weaken with the rest of my team, if you've got the Spadef Regirock and I'm not catching it with Focus Blast and I'm not chipping it with my Dodrio and I'm not, pursuit trapping their Jellicent, so Spec Simisear has a hard time getting through that.
Or even Lantern, to be honest.
Oh yeah, AV Lantern, you really gotta work on chipping that. It can be a bit of a progress. It's not an easy mod to use, not an amazing mod, but what it does is that it breaks shit, and it's real strong, and no one really sets out to prepare for fire types, so you can often just put in an abysmal amount of work. And in the actual game that I'll link, Tasker has a Quagsire and a fully specially defensive Clefairy, which cannot get 2-hit KO'd by any of Simisear's moves, but can if it's at only 95%, then Fire Blast starts to 2-hit KO. He also has a Silvally Dragon, but that doesn't have recovery. He has a fat Probopass, but Probopass is eventually going to get 2-hit KO'd, and literally all I do is just get Simisear in on his Pom-Pom a couple of times and spam strong attacks, and it puts in so much work. Simisear somehow puts in the work, even in a really hard matchup. Or also Dodrio breaking his Quagsire was pretty big, I guess, because Dodrio can be silly sometimes. But yeah, Spec Simisear, really cool mon that is just a fun thing to experiment with, but isn't consistent and isn't something that would stay part of the meta for a long time. It's a gimmick.
Yep. Perfect for the namesake, I guess. And also, I think with the Simisear is that I've seen, it's playing on the matchup that more and more people, they're just going to bring generic fire counters. They're not going to bother bringing for example, if you look at the team nowadays and you say, okay, your fire resist is Caracosta, you're sort of yeah, that'll do. At the end of the day, it's your fire resist doesn't really need to be a dedicated Simisear counter for it to be your team to be okay versus fire types.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's
it's playing on the strings that the meta is like at the moment, and I feel like it's probably a like Semi-Syrian just in general. It's just like a decent Pokemon at the moment.
Yeah, and what I mean when I say it is a gimmick, it is kind of like what a gimmick should be in my opinion. Because frankly, sometimes we're like, oh, fur in PU, that's a gimmick, or a meme. Meme also super misused. A gimmick is often conflated with a meme. A gimmick set can just be like a one-off weird kind of thing that doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be AV Kadabra or whatever. Spec Semi-Series is something I genuinely brought to a tour that I actually kind of care about. It's still a gimmick. So just because we call it Jad's Gimmick Corner doesn't mean everything here has to be like weird shit. And some of it has been. Some of it has been stuff that I genuinely want to use. Like I've still not used that Fat Blossom, but I want to get to that at some point.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I talked so much for like the latter half of the podcast because it was my replays and then my gimmick and Megazord's Gimmick Corner.
Like, this is like the perfect opportunity for you to like talk about it. So it's like, yeah.
Mm. And next week you'll get to talk more than I am because we'll have your set to talk about and Tasker vs. Zuri and whatever seasonal games have happened. Thank you all for tuning in. If you've lasted this long, if you're 120 minutes into a PU podcast, I respect you and make a comment about it so that I know you exist. And Jad knows you exist too. I'm sorry, Jad, I should have ignored you.
You see, this is what happens every week. I just get ignored.
Okay, we'll talk about this in bed. Goodbye.